Hey guys, welcome back to the best place for new and aspiring lawyers on all things law school, the legal industry, and the lawyering life. I'm Angela Vorpahl of angelavorpahl.com, and this video is one that I really wanted to make for a long time because whether you know it or not, I am a huge grammar nerd, and I have a feeling that those of you out there are as well. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the top 5 grammar mistakes that lawyers make all the time in their writing so that you guys can avoid those mistakes in your own writing. And be sure to stay till the end because we are going to go over the top 2 writing battles that lawyers still to this day have knocked down drag out fights about. And I'll tell you how I come down on those 2 issues. So if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to hit subscribe, tap that notification bell. And if you guys are pumped about this grammar video, smash that like button and let's go. Number 1, IE versus EG. And I see lawyers mess this one up all the time, so let's go ahead and set the record straight. So both are Latin abbreviations, which of course unnecessarily complicates our lives, but the important thing to remember is that IE is used when you are explaining something and EG is used when you are giving examples of something. So, for example, I could say, I love junk food, i.e. food that is terrible for my body, because I'm explaining what junk food is. You could also say, I love junk food, e.g. donuts, spicy nachos, fruit by the foot, because those are all examples of what junk food could be. I would also potentially use it in a lawyerly example. So defendant violated the Clean Air Act, i.e. the National Act to Control Pollution Emissions. Or you could say defendant violated the Clean Air Act, e.g. defendant dumped chemicals into the river, or messed with fuel emission detectors, or stored hazardous waste. So whether you want to explain a concept or give examples of that concept is going to be what dictates your use of IE or EG. Number 2, fewer versus less. And the most important thing to keep in mind here is whether what you're talking about is countable or not. Because if it is countable, you're going to use the word fewer, and if it is not countable, you're going to use the word less. So things that are countable are things like Skittles or steps or people, and things that are not countable are things like milk or sand or love. And so an example might be, if I got fewer hours of sleep every night, I would be a disaster because hours are countable. But you could also say, if I got less sleep every night, I would be a disaster because sleep is not countable. And a lawyerly example of this might be, the associate worked fewer hours this month than she has all year, or the associate worked less this month than she has all year. So of course, the thing you need to always keep in mind is whether what you're talking about is countable or not. Number 3 is the placement of the word only. And this is a really common mistake you'll see both in new lawyers' writings and advanced lawyers' writings. And essentially the trick here is that you want to put only as close as possible to the thing you're actually modifying. So let me give you an example. The lead partner only asked the question to harass the witness, or the lead partner asked the question only to harass the witness. You want to explain why the partner asked the question, not how the partner asked the question, right? And so in the first sentence, you say the lead partner only asked the question. That sort of suggests that he asked the question as opposed to eliminated the question or yelled the question or hid the question, which is not the meaning you're trying to convey. Let me give you guys another example. So he only accepted the money as a bribe, or he accepted the money only as a bribe. The second sentence is much closer to the meaning that you're trying to convey because in the first sentence, you're modifying accepted as opposed to hid, as opposed to rejected, right? And so just make sure that you're getting that word only as close as you can to the thing you're modifying. It's a subtle but powerful difference. And even in my own writing, I make this mistake all the time. And so before submitting any sort of work product, I always Control F the word only to see where it's falling in my sentences and make sure that I'm modifying the thing I actually want to modify. All right, guys, we're 3 in, 2 to go. If you're still with me, let me know in the comments what your favorite grammar pet peeve is because I love reading and hearing about them. And I'd love to hear what yours is. Number 4, were versus was. And this one's really powerful because not only will it dictate whether you're using it grammatically correctly, it can also completely change the meaning of what you're trying to convey. So if any of you guys out there took high school Spanish, you may remember the conditional tense, which is used for hypothetical or imaginary or conditional situations. And that also applies in English. So for example, if I said, if I were a better singer, I would audition for The Voice, I'm using the subjunctive in that case, which in English comes out as the use of were. Similarly, in Beyonce's song, if I were a boy, that is also using this subjunctive, I were, not if I was a boy, because it's a hypothetical, imaginary scenario, right? And so a lawyerly example of this would be, for example, if you wanted to convey that a witness was not at the scene of the crime, you might say, if the witness were at the scene of the crime, she would be able to describe the defendant in detail. Of course, suggesting that the witness was not there and that it is this hypothetical, non-realistic scenario. If you're on the other side and you are trying to convey the meaning that the witness was there, you would use a concrete, realistic version of that verb, which is was. So the witness was at the scene of the crime. That's why she's able to describe the defendant in such great detail. So were versus was is going to be something concrete and realistic that actually happened versus something conditional, hypothetical, or imaginary. And number 5, further versus farther. And the important takeaway here is that farther is used for physical distance that is measurable, whereas further is used for figurative distance. So for example, you could say, the witness testified that she lived farther away from the school than her children. Or you could then say, nothing is further from the truth, because in the first example, we're talking about physical distance from the school, and in the second example, we're talking about a figurative distance, not an actual distance from the truth. Another example would be, the microphone is farther away from my mouth than I would like, or she advanced further in her career than he did. Because again, in the first example, we're talking about a measurable physical distance, and in the second example, we're talking about a figurative distance. So those are the top 5 grammar mistakes. Let me know which ones you hated, which ones you already knew, and which ones were something that you learned for the first time. And as promised, the top 2 knockdown, drag out fights between lawyers having to do with punctuation of all things. Number 1 is the Oxford comma. So the Oxford comma is the last comma in a list of things. It is stylistic, it is not required, but proponents of the use of the Oxford comma, like myself, would argue that it helps to eliminate confusion. It signals to the reader that there is a list and that that list is coming to an end. Let me know in the comments if you guys are pro Oxford comma or anti Oxford comma. The next battle that still takes place in Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups all over the country is the use of either a 1 space or 2 space after a period. So neither one has actually been declared incorrect, but the 2 spacers are definitely the more traditional approach, coming from the days of when typewriters were used as the main writing tool. And that was obviously to distinguish delineations between sentences. Nowadays, with word processing software being the main writing tool, arguably 2 spaces are no longer relevant or needed. And as a big proponent of the 1 spacers, I should say as a convert from 2 spaces to 1 space, Microsoft actually came out in 2020 to declare its allegiance to the 1 spacers. They are now implementing in Microsoft Word to show that 2 spaces after a period is in fact an error and suggesting a correction to 1 space. So that's it for today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed this grammar battle, and be sure to check out these 2 videos over here and subscribe over here, and I will see you guys in the next one. Have an awesome week. Bye guys.